This is a common issue that affects many PCs, yet it's often overlooked because you can't see it. It lurks in plain sight, slowing you down, wasting your time, and costing you productivity. What's worse, you may not even realize it's there. So what is it? The answer is quite simple, yet profound. It's your disk drive. No, not your entire storage, just your disk drive. If your disk drive is running at 100% capacity, it doesn't mean you've filled up your C drive or run out of storage space. It means your computer is hammering away on your drive nonstop, whether you're doing anything or not. And if that's the case, it's worth figuring out why. After all, your disk drive is one of the most crucial components inside your PC. In fact, it's just as important as your RAM. Of course, they're different, but both serve as a temporary landing spot for data. Your CPU uses RAM to hold onto information it needs immediately. Meanwhile, your disk stores everything else it needs to access later. That includes documents, images, games, operating system files, and apps. When you want to save a file or install an app, the OS copies it from the drive into RAM before sending it to the CPU. Once it's done, it returns to the disk until you need it again. It is easy to see then how a problem with this workflow could make your PC sluggish and unresponsive. But the question is, what causes such problems and what can you do to fix them? Well, here are some of the biggest culprits to watch out for and the best ways to address them. First, there's bad sectors. Like any physical component, disk drives aren't perfect. Over time, cells within the drive can fail and become unable to reliably store data. The drive's built-in redundancy checks for this and marks off any bad sectors. In fact, modern disks have spare cells to swap in for bad ones. So unless a large number of sectors are failing at once, you probably won't notice anything. Any program that tries to write to a bad sector will trigger an error that the OS should catch. But as with any complex machine, sometimes those errors slip through. For example, a program might try to write to a bad sector and end up locking up your whole PC. You might also encounter random read errors if a sector flips bits or gets misread. And if that happens to a critical system file, it could cause instability. Now, fortunately, Windows does have tools for detecting and repairing certain disk errors. So if you suspect a bad sector is to blame for your 100 disk usage, try launching the built-in check disk tool. Open a command prompt and type xc. FEROX. Note that C refers to your boot drive, so replace that with whatever drive letter applies. Now, the F switch fixes any found errors, while the R switch locates and recovers bad sectors. Lastly, the X switch will dismount the drive first to ensure no program is using it. Next up is malware. While antivirus programs are designed to protect against viruses and worms, they can sometimes go wrong. Many times an overzealous AV might flag a legit file for a false positive, then block it. This can easily cause a system crash if it flags a kernel file or driver. Equally dangerous is malware that goes undetected or manages to infiltrate your system. Some of these threats can completely subvert your PC, turning it into a zombie and using it to launch attacks on others. In either case, an infected system can exhaust your disk trying to access or modify files it shouldn't. So regularly scanning your system for viruses and worms isn't a bad idea. But note that third-party AV programs tend to be more reliable than Windows Defender on its own. But assuming neither of these is to blame, another possible cause is fragmentation. Unlike solid-state drives, traditional hard drives spin and mechanical parts move around inside them. There are also multiple heads that move across the disk surface, reading and writing bits of data called sectors. These are small sections of magnetic material that can be magnetized in different directions to represent either a 0 or a 1. All the files on your drive are split into these tiny chunks, meaning the heads have to travel all over to assemble them. This is obviously a bottleneck compared to SSDs, which don't have moving parts and can read data in parallel. Regardless, if your HDD is bogged down fetching fragments of data, it can't keep up with demand. So instead of waiting, programs might decide to tie up the disk for longer, aggravating the problem further. Fortunately, Windows has a built-in defragmenter, but it's not enabled by default. So if you haven't used it before, now's the time. Just open the Defragment and Optimize Drives tool and hit Optimize. Note that this won't help your SSD at all since its data is already stored in parallel, Another potential cause is disk quotas. If you run Windows Pro for workstations or Enterprise editions, you might have noticed that your local disk has a quota. This limits how much data you can store on the drive, but it also affects performance. The closer you get to that limit, the slower the drive becomes, especially if you're writing to it. That's because the system has to constantly check your quota and enforce the limit. It's a useful feature for businesses, but if you're running out of disk space in general, it could contribute to higher usage numbers. The good news is that Windows Server does automatically free up space if your quota is reached. However, if none of those fixes your 100 disk usage issue, you should investigate how you're using your PC. For example, if your SSD is 100% full, you'll experience much lower speeds than if you had 100 gigabytes of free space left. Or perhaps you've got a ton of unnecessary files that Windows is trying to index. To fix that, search for indexing options, click on the advanced options, then choose exclude. From here, click on advanced, then click file types, click on each file type you want excluded, then click OK. Finally, let's talk about your hardware. It's rare for the drive itself to be the source of a 100 disk usage problem. But if you're running an older drive, it could be approaching the end of its life. You might even notice that the noise coming from your drive has changed or become louder. Either way, you can test your drive with Windows built-in tool. Open a command prompt and type crystal disk mark. This will give you a breakdown of your drive's performance and tell you if it's worth upgrading. Ultimately, there are plenty of reasons why your disk drive could be at 100 capacity, but only a few actually require you to panic. However, if you notice that the performance dip only started after you installed a new piece of software, odds are that's the source of the problem. In most cases, this is an app that's either poorly coded or has some kind of bug. If you can pinpoint which app is causing the problem, contact the developer and let them know. On the other hand, if you installed a faulty driver, simply uninstall it and revert back to the previous version. Hopefully, after watching this video, you have a better understanding of how to diagnose a 100 disk usage problem. In most cases, you can fix it by tweaking some settings and configurations. But if it persists, please leave a comment below. We'll be happy to help. Until next time.